Hey everyone, Matt, along with my brother Anthony, we're from the Pitti Group Wealth Management, and this is the Finance Things in Life. Today we're going to be talking about financial planning. A lot of people know that they need to invest and save for retirement, but they don't necessarily know if they're doing the right things to get them to where they want to be. So today we're going to talk about a plan that we use and a tool that can help you get to where you want to be later in retirement.
Yeah, so like Matt said, one of the things that we like to do with our clients on an initial meeting is to go over this financial plan. You know, a lot of people that we speak with tell us that they're contributing to a 401k or they're contributing to their IRA or a brokerage account to help plan for retirement. And then when we ask them, what's that plan? They kind of look at us with a blank face, like, well, to retire, to have money in retirement. It's like, great. Well, what does that look like? So one of the things we like to do is come up with what does that look like. So in that initial meeting, one of the things we like to discuss is, well, when would you like to retire? You know, is it 63? Is it 65? What's an ideal time, and what's an acceptable time? Kind of gets the conversation started. So, Matt, I know how I like to do things. Tell me a little bit about your first step creating that financial plan for somebody.
Yeah. So, like you said, that first initial meeting, whether you're working with someone that's in their 20s or maybe nearing retirement, it could be a big difference. Someone nearing retirement might have a better idea of when they'd like to retire. Someone maybe in their mid to late 20s probably haven't even thought about it. But really, it's coming up with, okay, if you had to have your ideal situation, your ideal age when you want to retire, whether it's 65 or if it's 50, I don't care.
That'd
I just
nice.
need to know, right? We just need to have kind of a game plan, a goal in mind. So if your ideal age is 50, great. But then what's your acceptable age? So then acceptable age is like, I'm not going to work past this age. So once we start there, then it's kind of breaking down and kind of looking at the layers underneath and saying, okay, what other goals do you have in mind? Do you have any kids that you want to help pay for school? Do you want to buy a second home? Do you have any traveling that you'd like to do? Grandkids, things like that. So any other goals that you have in between now and retirement and then post-retirement. So those are kind of the first steps that we kind of take a look at and kind of lay that groundwork. And then from there, it's kind of looking at the next kind of couple things as far as, are you saving money? How much do you have saved already? What you're investing in?
Yeah. So a lot of spending goals. Well, I guess my next question would be, if I'm a young investor, how do I know what I'm going to be spending in retirement? I mean, I could be spending $80,000 a year right now, and if I'm looking at retiring in 25 years, I don't know what I'm going to be spending in retirement. How do you walk through those steps?
Yeah. So another thing, someone that we're running this plan for that's, nearing retirement or retired, it's going to be different. We're going to have a better idea of how much they need to spend. When you look at healthcare costs, or if they have a mortgage or anything else, or medical expenses, things like that, we can kind of get a better gauge. But someone that's younger, where they're not going to retire for another 30 years, maybe, $80,000 today is not $80,000 30 years from now.
So that's the truth.
Typically, what we do is we kind of want to look at, if they want to have that same lifestyle, we're going to use that 80,000, but then we use inflation and kind of build that into the plan.
Got to incorporate the price of eggs.
Right. You never know with eggs or gas, or if we go through another COVID experience, maybe it's toilet paper. That could be a retirement plan as you save up on toilet paper for the next pandemic.
Keep the essentials.
Right. So that's kind of like a big thing, is planning for inflation as well.
Great. Now, getting back to, I want to set money aside for travel, for education expenses. Now we're diving into 529 plans or setting up a UTMA for one of our kids. that all gets incorporated into that spending goal, or is that an additional, say I want $80,000 for retirement and then another $15,000 for travel expenses per year and another, $20,000 per year to go to college savings? Like, is that all additional? How does that kind of work in my plan?
Yeah, so everyone's different. I have some clients that have done it where they just lump everything. This is my expense on an annual basis. This is going to cover all my home expenses, my travel, any 529 plans, any extracurriculars. And I have some clients that want to say, okay, this is what I need to live off of on an annual basis, and these are things in addition that I want to save for, have money for, whether it's travel on an annual basis or home renovations. That's another big one that I've seen. And so home renovations, maybe that's a short time period. Over the next 5 years, I anticipate home renovations of $10,000 a year or something like that. Or maybe it's buying a new car. I plan on buying a new car in 5 years, and I want a lump sum. So. You can do it either way. Whatever, you can kind of customize it to whatever fits, your goals and what you want to see.
Gotcha. I'm sure, at least from my experience, I've seen it. Some of those things that hinder somebody's goals. Let's say it's liabilities. Like I've got a mortgage I have to pay off, or I've got student loans. How does all that get incorporated into this plan? Do you come up with a budget as far as how much you're putting towards those liabilities to kind of get them to dwindle down?
Yeah, we can incorporate your mortgage or any other expenses that you have, whether it's loans, and kind of build that into the plan, and kind of say this is your interest rate that you're paying, this is what you're paying on a monthly basis, and then once that stops, it'll affect the outcome of the plan. But it doesn't necessarily have to be incorporated in there. Some people use those expenses as part of what they're living off of on an annual basis. So we can get as detail-oriented as someone wants, or kind of have as broad as someone wants as well. So it's really what they're comfortable with, and getting back to the age that someone runs their financial plan. Someone that's in their late 20s, they're going to have a lot of unknown over the next 30, 40 years and beyond, because, we kind of run this plan beyond retirement. You retire and it just doesn't end. You need to kind of keep planning for the next 20, 30 years of retirement. So, we can kind of look at it a number of different ways.
Yeah. Side note, one of the most important things that I try to, at least with my clients, try to facilitate, get on the same page with your spouse. It is so important. Everyone asks, well, should I invite my spouse to this meeting? 100% yes. God forbid anything were to happen to you and your spouse doesn't know where you bank, what retirement plans you have, what your goals are for retirement. If you're not talking to your spouse about what your goals are for retirement or your financial goals in general, that's just like a huge lagger in your plan. So number one thing, get on the same page with your spouse, discuss your finances. That is a huge benefit in making it a successful plan.
Yeah. Now, and I will touch on this, and it's not across the board, but what I've seen is, the older generation, our grandparents or even great grandparents maybe, their finances were more separate.
Yeah.
And then, because I've come across where, the husband will have his own accounts, the wife will have her own accounts, and they really don't know anything that's going on. They just, bills have been paid over the years, but when something happens, things can get lost. And then I think there was a period of time where everything was commingled, everything was joint accounts, and everything went into one account. You paid with that one account, and it was kind of simple. But I feel like with this younger generation, things are going back to having everything separate. And, I don't know the reason behind it. I don't know if people are, starting families later in life. But, it's important you don't have to commingle. You don't have to have joint accounts if you don't want to. If you want to keep everything separate, that's fine. But having the conversation of, this is where I bank, this is where you bank, and this is what I have in it. They don't have to know exactly, but having those things in place is very important. And now getting back to kind of incorporating that into your financial plan, you can run a financial plan on your own. We always stress on having it, if you're living together and you're kind of paying expenses together, it makes sense to run the plan as a family, but you can kind of run it separate if you need to, or kind of want to look at it that way as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Communication is key. Now, this is a little outside there. Can you tell me about an experience that you've had specifically with, you don't have to name a specific client, but like what's the most interesting plan that you've created, or like what's an out-of-the-box kind of plan that you've created that's just been like kind of just...
So I had, a couple different unique situations, but one specifically was I had a client that owned a business, younger client. He was actually in his mid-30s, and he wanted to retire by 45. He actually wanted to retire before that, but he wanted to retire at 45. And not completely stop working, but he had a young family. He wanted to sell his business, retire at 45 so he could spend time with his family. And then once his kids kind of went off to school or went off on their own, then he kind of picked something back up.
Oh, I don't want to interrupt you there. One of the things that I've always found is when we ask people when they want to retire, they think they stop working. Retirement is not when you stop working. It's, people can still continue to work in retirement or have a hobby. So they always think like, well, I don't want to ever retire. It's like, well, that's not exactly what I'm asking. I'm asking when you want to start this new journey for yourself.
The next chapter.
The next chapter. Beautiful. So I just want to throw that in there. You kind of reminded me of it, but yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, so that was his goal, is he wanted to essentially sacrifice as much as he could, meaning put money away, sock it away over the next 5-10 years that he could. So he had enough money to last him, 10, 15 years when he sold his business or stopped working for a period of time. So we had to run the numbers, and we made it work. And I will say, his plan obviously changed. He ended up selling his company, and he did stop working for a period of time, and kind of being with his family and spending time with his kids. But he has since started working again for another company. So just because you have those goals in place, and this is what I'm planning on doing, it doesn't necessarily always end up that way.
Yeah.
It changes a lot. And so that's another thing that we try to remind clients is, just because we have this plan in place and these goals, it doesn't mean this is set in stone.
So I'm not carving it into this table right here.
Yeah. So, and the plan, and I don't think we've said the name of the financial tool that we use, but it's called Envision, and it's a circle, and I kind of go through the circle, and it's we look at what your goals are, we run the scenario and see what's gonna work and what's not gonna work, and then we go to a recommended plan. But then there's always that part where it's your goals are going to change, and if they do, then we just kind of revisit the plan and make the changes as necessary. So
yeah, it's a continuous changing plan. Life changes every day, so you never know what your goals are going to be.
Box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get.
That's a nice callback. I like that.
Thank you.
Forrest Gump for all you Gen Zers out there that don't know what that quote's from.
I think we may have dated ourselves on that one.
Oh, that's too bad. I guess what other considerations should people take account for? Or is there a certain way of investing or a certain situation that you like to recommend to people as far as creating a financial plan, or as far as like getting started or even in retirement? I guess what's a a general overall tip that you would recommend to people?
Yeah, I mean, I think the earlier you start, the better. You know, you don't want to have, you know, you actually retire or, you know, quit your job and then finally meet with someone and go over your plan then, and then you realize
you're nowhere near it.
Right.
It's a terrible feeling.
Unfortunately, I've had those conversations with
Yeah.
people, and they're not fun conversations to have. So starting earlier is probably the number one tip. Now, you don't have to have an in-depth financial plan right away, but, you know, looking at your goals and making sure that what you're currently doing is going to get you to where you want to be, that's what you want. So are you investing properly? Are you too conservative or too aggressive? You know, are you planning on spending too much? So those are all things that you can adjust ahead of time. Once you retire, then, you know, you only have a couple options, and that's spend less or you got to go back to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always gotten the question is, you know, X amount of money, a good amount to retire on.
Right.
It's like, well, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
It depends on what your goal is.
Yeah.
You know, some people can retire on $300,000 a year. Some people can't retire on $1 million, or not $300,000 a year, but $300,000 in their retirement account, or $1 million in the retirement account. It depends on how you're living, what your living expenses are.
Yeah.
Some people live a lot more frugally than others. Some, as soon as they see that amount in their retirement account, that's the most money they've ever seen in their life. So then they kind of go on a little bit of a spending spree. Now you got to adjust your whole plan because you've spent too much money, unfortunately.
Yeah, everyone's different, you know. So, you know, that I've gotten that question a bunch of times too. You know, I heard I need $1 million. I heard I need $3 million. Well, I mean, you may need $1 million, you may need 3, you may need 10. It just depends on your lifestyle. So, it's more about the planning aspect and making sure that what you're doing now and today is going to get you there, not as far as a number in the end. Yeah,
I can't stress enough. It doesn't matter how old you are. You know, if you're in your 20s and you get your first grown-up job, or if you're in your 30s or whenever you're looking to start a family, or coming up close to retirement, it's so important to come up with that plan to say, hey, this is what I have currently. What do I need? So we can come up with what are those needs for your life. Is it buying a new house? Is it paying for a wedding? Is it paying for school? Is it, you know, buying a second home in Florida, get some warmer weather? It's so important to have that plan in place to see if you're on the right track. So that's why we make it a priority in some cases that our first meeting is going over this plan and just make sure we're in touch with what your goals are as well. So as we're going through, we can say, hey, great job, you hit that goal. Like, what's next? Is there anything next? It's just such a vital piece to creating that plan.
Yeah, for sure. And that brings up, you know, another thing that's interesting, or, you know, to kind of keep in mind is a lot of people change jobs, right? And so having that plan in place may help you when you're making those decisions on whether you should change jobs or switch careers. You can kind of revisit that plan. So I've had a couple instances where we have a plan in place. Everything is looking great. You know, it's a husband and wife. One of them want to change careers altogether. So they're going to not only lose the ability of putting money into a 401k, but also the company match. But
free money.
Right. But, you know, it was a passion of theirs to try something different, and they thought they would be good at it, and they thought maybe they would be able to start putting money away into their retirement plan again eventually. But they wanted to see if it would work. And we looked at a number of different scenarios. One being she never started working again. So, you know, you kind of stop that retirement savings altogether. And then we also looked at, you know, things working out and her beginning to put money away into a retirement plan again. And so that way, when we ran the numbers, she could kind of say, okay, this is what the outcome is. It's still successful, even if I stop and I'm not able to save money again in my retirement plan. And then that way she's going into, her decision, with a little bit more information than just saying, you know what, I quit. It's like,
this is going to work out.
Right. Which is great. I mean, hey, listen, more power to you if you can do that. But, I think it's beneficial when you're making those big life decisions to kind of have a little bit more knowledge if it's going to be in your best interest, for sure.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of another thing. There's just so many layers to this. When either leaving a job or if you're at a job that has a 401k with a match, one of the other things you want to make sure is that your investments line up with your goals.
Mm-hmm.
Like, say you want to retire at 45 or 50 or whenever it is, but you're extremely conservative. That may not be working out in your best interest, unless you have obviously enough money saved up and you're looking to hold on to it. But making sure like your 401k and your IRA is aligned properly to meet those goals, that's another huge aspect that a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah.
Then you plug in a target date fund and set it and forget it, and 10, 15 years down the road, maybe that wasn't your best option.
Yeah, for sure.
No. Anything else that you think would be beneficial to talk about? I feel like we've covered a lot.
I know, right? No, I mean, I think number one, the earlier you start, the better.
Huge.
Not only for saving, but actually creating a plan.
Yep.
And then the next big thing would be, updating that plan on an annual basis or a regular basis, or when you have those life-changing events, whether it's switching careers, having children, a death in the family, inheritance, selling a business, divorce.
Yeah.
Those are the times where you need to update the plan to make sure that you're staying on track. Another thing that we can talk about real quick is, with the volatility we're seeing in the market now, everyone's looking at their statements or logging into their accounts, and they're seeing, their accounts are down. Probably,
Looks like a slide.
Right. But the benefit of having a plan in place that you can track that it's not, you're no longer looking at the bottom line number. Everyone does it. I do it. I look at my account and I say, okay, this is what I have saved, and it's either up or down depending on what's going on in the markets. But by having a plan in place, you're able to see if you're still on track. So maybe the markets are down. Maybe your accounts are down. But if you're still on track, it can maybe take away some of that emotional stress that people have seeing that their accounts are down. So they're like, listen, the accounts are down, but I'm still on track.
I feel good
To meet my retirement goals.
That is huge.
And that could mean so much to someone from, being comfortable in the volatility in the market compared to someone that ends up making an emotional decision and then does something that they end up regretting by, either getting in the market or getting out of the market.
Yeah. That's a huge point. Money is so emotional. We talk all the time how, selling in a market downfall can just extremely hinder your financial plan. I don't know who we were meeting with the other day, but they were saying some of the best days in the market were the day after a huge downfall. And if you miss out on some of those best days, it can dramatically change your financial trajectory by like a large percentage. It was insane. I wish I actually had the sheet with me. That's a great point.
Yeah. So, like I said, your financial plan is important. Everyone knows that saving and investing, diversifying is important. But kind of bringing it all together, I think, is one of the most important things anyone can do.
Yeah, and stay educated with your financial plan as well. Make sure you're asking questions. We always say you don't know what you don't know. So there are no dumb questions. The financial industry is a very complicated one. So ask questions, get a familiarity with what's going on in your plan, and make sure you're comfortable with it. that'll be a huge advantage for you.
Yeah, cool. Well, I appreciate you guys tuning in.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is the Finance Things in Life. I'm Matt. This is Anthony. We plan on doing some future podcasts as well. So if you guys have any recommendations as, things you want to hear or learn about, feel free to shoot them over, and, we're more than happy to kind of discuss them.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.